The rain fell in restless sheets over Manhattan, drumming against the cracked window of a tiny Brooklyn apartment where Lena Carter sat hunched on a second-hand sofa. The night was late, but exhaustion kept her eyes open, the same exhaustion that had lived with her since her ex had disappeared, leaving behind promises of child support and nothing else. Her son Noah, 4 years old, slept fitfully in the bedroom down the hall, the faint hum of his nightlight casting soft shadows across the worn floor. Lena clutched her phone with trembling fingers, staring at the glowing screen. Bills stacked on the counter reminded her of everything she owed. Rent was already overdue, electricity would follow. Her tuition payments for design classes were long past due as well. She had waited too long for Ethan to come through, too long for him to remember that Noah was his child as well. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, the words burning inside her chest. She typed out a message with a mix of anger and desperation. "You promised support this week. Noah needs clothes. Rent is due. Stop hiding." Then, as if some wild courage had slipped into her veins, she added another line she should never have written. "I know you got the money from the Blackwell deal. Do not make me call them directly." The name had lingered in her mind from one of Ethan's careless conversations, a muttered brag months ago about knowing someone high up at Blackwell Industries. She never really understood what it meant. Tonight she used it like a bluff in a poker game she could not afford to lose. She hit send before fear could stop her. The room felt colder as soon as the message left her phone. She exhaled slowly, then pressed her palms to her temples. It was only Ethan, only the man who had always lied, the man who would never respond. She set the phone on the arm of the sofa and closed her eyes. A vibration startled her. The phone buzzed once, twice. She snatched it up, half expecting another excuse or silence. Instead, 3 words appeared on the screen that froze her breath. "Who are you?" Her pulse stumbled. The number was not Ethan's. She blinked, reading again, certain her tired eyes betrayed her. "Who are you?" And then another message followed instantly. "What do you know about Blackwell?" Her stomach dropped. A stone of dread settled in her chest. She had misdialed. She had sent the wrong message. Not to Ethan, not to the man who owed her money, but to someone else, someone connected to Blackwell. The name was real, and she had just placed herself in the middle of it. Her hands shook as she typed quickly. "Sorry, wrong person. Please ignore." The reply came within seconds. "Address." She gasped and dropped the phone on the couch. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. Address, as if this stranger had the right to demand it. She pressed both hands over her mouth, willing herself not to scream, not to wake Noah. It had to be a mistake, someone playing a trick. But the phone buzzed again. 1423 Hawthorne Street. Apartment 4C, her own address, her full address spelled out on the screen. Lena staggered to her feet, clutching the back of the sofa for balance. Her breath came fast and shallow. She glanced toward Noah's door, the quiet sound of his breathing a reminder of everything she had to protect. She pulled aside the curtain with trembling fingers. Rain-slicked streets reflected orange halos of streetlights. Empty sidewalks, the steady hiss of traffic in the distance. Then headlights turned the corner. A black limousine slid into view, sleek and silent against the storm. It slowed until it rested directly in front of her building. The engine idled with a low, predatory hum. Lena's throat closed. She whispered to herself, as if denial could make it vanish. "No one knows me. No one cares. This cannot be happening. But her words dissolved against the glass as the limousine door opened and a figure stepped out beneath the shelter of a dark umbrella. The man's silhouette was tall, precise, framed by the glow of the streetlight. He moved with a controlled ease, not hurried, not hesitant. Another shape followed, larger, broader, unmistakably a bodyguard. Together they crossed the pavement, rain sliding off the umbrella in silver streams. She stumbled back from the window, panic clawed at her chest. She grabbed her phone again, her thumb hovering over the numbers for the police. But what could she say? That she had texted the wrong person, that someone in a limousine now stood outside her building. She imagined the bored dispatcher's voice, the disbelief. Her mind spun without answers. Heavy footsteps echoed in the stairwell. The old building carried every sound, and these were deliberate, weighted, moving steadily closer. She clutched the doorknob of Noah's room, ready to wake him, ready to scoop him into her arms. Though she had no plan where to run. 3 floors up, no fire escape, no safe exit. The footsteps stopped outside her door. Silence pressed in, thicker than the storm. Her body trembled, waiting for the knock. When it came, it was not a pounding fist, but a soft, measured rap. The sound chilled her more than violence would have. Calm, controlled. A man who knew there was no need to rush. Her phone buzzed once more in her hand. A new message glowed across the cracked screen. "Open the door, Ms. Carter." The breath tore from her lungs. They knew her name, not just her address, her name. The fear inside her expanded until it drowned out everything but the pounding of her heart. She looked back at Noah's closed door, the lavender glow of his nightlight seeping through the crack. He was all that mattered. The knock came again, patient, expectant. She pressed her back to the wall, the phone clutched to her chest. She had no choice. Whatever waited on the other side had already found her. And in that moment, Lena Carter understood the truth. One wrong text had changed everything. The hallway light spilled in as Lena's trembling hand turned the lock every nerve in her body. Screaming against the decision, yet knowing hesitation was useless, the door opened to reveal a man she had only heard of in whispers. On the news, Damien Blackwell, billionaire CEO, whose empire reached into every corner of the tech industry. His presence filled the doorway before he even stepped inside. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that seemed to drink in the dim glow of the flickering overhead light, a silk tie resting neatly at his throat, his shoulders broad and immovable. Beside him stood a man nearly twice his size, dark coat, buttoned eyes scanning the hallway like a predator sniffing for threats. The air around them carried a faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with the wet, metallic tang of the storm outside. Damien's eyes found hers, instantly dark gray and unyielding, assessing her in a single glance, like she was nothing more than a variable in one of his calculations. Lena's knees threatened to give way, but she forced herself to stand straighter. She tried to speak, her voice faltering into the silence. "It was a mistake. I texted the wrong number." He stepped forward, and the umbrella folded neatly in his bodyguard's hands, dripped onto the cracked tile floor. Damien's lips barely curved, not quite a smile, more a flicker of acknowledgement. "Wrong number. You mentioned my company by name. That is no mistake." Lena's breath caught. Her pulse stuttered. She shook her head, clutching the phone, so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I do not know anything about Blackwell, I swear." His gaze swept the shabby living room behind her, lingering on the threadbare sofa, the bills stacked by the lamp, then finally on the closed door to Noah's room. He said nothing at first, and the silence stretched until it became unbearable. Then he pulled a sleek phone from his pocket and tapped the screen, holding it out to her. The text glowed between them, her desperate words illuminated in damning clarity. "I know you got the money from the Blackwell deal. Do not make me call them directly." His voice was low, deliberate, carrying a steel edge that made her skin prickle. "You claim coincidence, but this phrase matches language, tied to a security breach we discovered this week." Lena's mouth went dry. Security breach. Her heart thudded painfully. She had meant nothing by it, only to shake Ethan into answering, but to Damien Blackwell, the words meant far more. She tried again. "It was just something I made up. I was bluffing. My ex mentioned Blackwell once. I swear I do not know anything." For a flicker of a second, she thought she saw curiosity in his eyes, as if he was testing the edges of her story, weighing truth against deceit. Before she could say more, his bodyguard Marcus pressed a finger to his earpiece, his deep voice cutting the tension. "Sir, there is movement across the street. Someone watching the building." Damien's eyes sharpened. He looked back at Lena, his presence suddenly closer, his shadow falling over her. "If you want to live, come with me. Now." Her throat constricted. Live what was happening? Who was outside panic surged through her, but she glanced at Noah's door, then back at the stranger, who already seemed to know every detail about her. Her voice cracked. "I cannot just leave." My son Damien's tone brooked no argument. "Bring him. The men outside are not mine, and if they are watching this place, you are already a target." The air in the hallway grew heavy. Every instinct screamed not to trust him, but the throb of fear for Noah pressed her forward. She whispered, "Wait here," and darted into the small bedroom. Noah stirred in his sleep as she gathered him into her arms, his warm weight pressing against her chest, his small hand curling unconsciously into her shirt. He blinked once but did not wake, only sighed softly as she kissed his forehead. When she stepped back into the living room, Damien had already moved inside his tall frame, surveying the space like a general mapping a battlefield. He gestured toward the door. "Hurry, Marcus is securing the car." Lena clutched Noah tighter. "This is insane. I do not know you. I do not belong in this." Damien's gaze locked with hers. "Then prove you are not part of it. Come with me and stay alive long enough for me to know the truth." She felt cornered, every exit closing in around her, every choice already stripped away by a single mistaken text. Her legs moved on their own, carrying her down the stairs behind him, the old building groaning with every step. The street outside gleamed wet and empty, save for the black limousine waiting at the curb. Its tinted windows reflected the orange glow of the streetlights, its engine humming with quiet menace. Marcus opened the rear door, scanning the shadows around them. Damien placed a hand at Lena's back, not rough but firm, guiding her forward. Inside, she hesitated at the threshold, heart pounding. Noah shifted against her, whimpering in his sleep. She whispered to herself for him and stepped into the car. The door shut with a heavy finality, sealing them into leather and glass, cutting away the storm. The interior smelled of cedar and polished steel, immaculate and cold. Damien settled across from her, his eyes never leaving her face. His presence filled the confined space until she could barely breathe. The limousine pulled smoothly into motion tires, whispering against the slick pavement. Lena clutched Noah on her lap, staring at the man across from her. His jaw was strong, clean lines carved into stone, his eyes calculating with every flicker of light from the passing streets. She forced words past the knot in her throat. "I told you I do not know anything. I just needed help. My son's father abandoned us. I made a mistake." Damien leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his voice quiet yet sharper than a blade. "Mistakes cost lives in my world. Until I know if yours was one of ignorance or intent, you will stay under my protection." Lena shook her head in disbelief. "Protection? You dragged me out of my home in the middle of the night." He regarded her with unnerving calm. "If I meant to harm you, Miss Carter, you would not be sitting here." She swallowed hard, clutching Noah closer, every beat of her heart a thunderclap in her ears. Outside the city, lights blurred into streaks of gold and silver. Inside the car, silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Finally, Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at the message, his expression unreadable, then looked back at her with eyes like storm clouds. "Someone leaked that I am moving a woman and child tonight, which means the mole is closer than I thought." His words hung in the air like smoke. Lena's stomach churned. A leak, a mole, and somehow her desperate message had placed her at the center of it all. She pressed her lips against Noah's hair, whispering a silent promise she was not sure she could keep. The limo surged forward through the storm, carrying them toward a future she could not see, a future already reshaped by one wrong text. The limousine glided through the rain-soaked streets of Manhattan, its tinted windows sealing Lena and Noah into a world that felt both foreign and suffocating. Every turn of the city blurred into neon streaks across the glass, every bump in the road making her clutch her son tighter. Damien Blackwell sat across from her like a statue of obsidian, his gaze fixed unrelenting, his presence consuming the silence. She wanted to scream, to demand he let her go, but fear of the unknown pressed her words into silence. Noah stirred against her chest, mumbling in his sleep, his small voice breaking the tension for a brief moment. Damien's eyes flicked toward the child, a shadow of something softer crossing his face, before disappearing into steel again. The car slowed, pulling into a private underground entrance, guarded by sleek security gates that opened at their approach with mechanical precision. The tires whispered against polished stone floors as the limo descended deeper into the subterranean garage. When the door finally opened, Marcus stepped out first, scanning the shadows with practiced vigilance. Then Damien gestured toward Lena with a motion that was neither invitation nor command, but something in between. She hesitated, clutching Noah, her voice cracking. "Where are you taking us?" Damien's tone was calm, implacable. "Somewhere safer than where you were." Safer, she thought bitterly, stepping into a place she had never imagined. The garage itself was spotless, lined with luxury vehicles, gleaming under white light. Marble columns rose from the floor like the pillars of some modern temple. Marcus led the way to a private elevator, holding the door open until Damien and Lena stepped inside. The ride upward was silent, except for the soft hum of machinery and the pounding of Lena's heart. When the doors slid open, her breath caught. She stepped into a penthouse that stretched out like a glass palace suspended above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed New York sprawled below them, skyscrapers twinkling against the storm rivers reflecting fractured light. The space was vast, lined with polished wood marble floors and minimalist art pieces that probably cost more than her entire yearly rent. She stood frozen, her cheap sneakers squeaking faintly against the gleaming floor. Noah blinked awake in her arms, his small eyes widening as he looked around. "Mommy, is this a hotel?" She swallowed the lump in her throat, forcing a smile for his sake. "Something like that, baby." Damien walked past her, unbuttoning his jacket with practiced ease, his eyes sweeping the room as though he was both host and warden. He gestured toward the far end of the living space, where a plush sofa sat facing a panoramic view of the skyline. "Set him down if you like." Lena clutched Noah tighter, suspicion flaring. "I am not letting my son out of my sight." Damien's expression remained unreadable, but his gaze lingered on the child with a flicker of something human. He crossed to a sleek bar, poured a glass of water, and handed it to her. "Drink. You look like you will collapse." She hesitated, but accepted her throat, parched her hand, trembling around the crystal glass. Noah wriggled in her arms, pointing toward the massive windows. "Look, Mommy, the cars look like toys." His innocent awe broke through her fear for a moment. Damien's gaze softened almost imperceptibly at the sound of the boy's voice. Marcus entered quietly, murmuring into his earpiece before leaning toward Damien. "We have confirmation. Eyes on the building in Brooklyn were not ours. They were Russian." Lena's blood turned cold. Russians. What did that even mean? Damien's jaw tightened, his voice low but decisive. "They are hunting a single mother in Brooklyn. That cannot be coincidence." His eyes cut back to Lena, sharp as a blade. "Which means they are hunting you." Her legs weakened, and she nearly dropped into the nearest chair. "Hunting me? I do not know anything. I am just a waitress. I take design classes when I can. I am not part of this." His gaze did not waver. "And yet here you are." His words sank into her like ice. She pressed Noah closer, whispering against his hair, but her eyes never left Damien's. "Please, I just want to go home." His voice was steady, final. "Home is no longer safe. Until I know who leaked what, you will stay here. This is not optional." Her breath caught in her chest, fury rising to cut through her fear. "That is kidnapping." Damien stepped closer, the city lights reflecting in his storm-gray eyes. "No, that is protection. If I wanted you gone, you would not be standing here." The air between them crackled, anger and fear colliding in the charged silence. She wanted to spit defiance to tell him he had no right, but the reality outside those windows loomed larger than pride. Noah looked up at Damien with the unfiltered curiosity of a child and asked the words that froze both adults in place. "Are you my new dad?" The innocence of the question hung in the air like a bell tolling through the penthouse. Lena's breath hitched, her heart breaking at the simplicity of it. Damien blinked once, his gaze flicking from the boy to Lena, something shifting in his expression that he quickly concealed. Marcus glanced away, as if giving them privacy for a moment that was too raw. The storm outside cracked with lightning, illuminating the skyline as silence wrapped around them all. Lena's world tilted again. She realized she was not just trapped in a stranger's empire, but standing on the edge of something far more dangerous than she could comprehend. Lena stood frozen in the lavish penthouse, her son's innocent question still echoing in her ears. "Are you my new dad?" She wanted to correct him instantly, to pull Noah away and shield him from the man whose name carried both fear and fascination across the city. But Damien Blackwell's expression had shifted, if only slightly, and Lena caught a glimpse of something more complex than the ruthless CEO plastered across the business pages. He turned away first, his voice measured. "It is late. Marcus will arrange a room for you and your son. You will stay here until I know more." His words were an order, not a request. Lena bristled fury, mixing with fear. "You cannot keep us here. I am not part of your world." Damien's gaze returned to her, sharp and unyielding. "Someone leaked information about a deal worth billions. That leak used words you sent to me tonight. Coincidence is not a luxury I can afford." Lena's voice trembled with anger. "I made it up. I was desperate. My ex left me with nothing. I wanted him to answer me, so I used the only name I remembered." Damien studied her face, as if weighing the truth in her eyes. Then his voice dropped lower. "Desperation makes people reckless, sometimes reckless enough to betray." She flinched, clutching Noah tighter, her chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. "I would never." His eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "Not willingly, perhaps, but if they think you know something, you are already a target." Noah yawned, tugging at her sleeve, and she pressed a kiss to his hair. Her anger flared again. "And what if I refuse to cooperate? What if I walk out that door?" Damien stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Then you and your son will not last the night." His voice was calm, but the weight behind the words sent a chill through her. She whispered, "So this is kidnapping after all." He shook his head. "This is survival. If I wanted to kidnap you, you would not be standing here negotiating." Something in his tone, so matter-of-fact, cut through her fury. She hated that it made sense. She hated that his logic, cold and ruthless, sounded like the only truth she had. He gestured toward the skyline beyond the glass. "You see those lights? Every competitor, every enemy, they thrive on weakness. The moment they know you exist, you are leverage, and leverage gets broken." Lena felt her throat tighten. Her hands trembled as she tried to steady Noah against her hip. She whispered through clenched teeth, "I never asked for this." Damien's voice softened by a fraction. "Neither did I." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, the storm raging outside, but the room frozen in electric stillness. Then Noah looked up at Damien with wide, curious eyes and said, "Mommy says my daddy left. Maybe you can stay?" The words pierced through her like a blade wrapped in innocence. Lena wanted to cry, to scream, to deny what her child had just offered so easily. Damien's jaw tightened, but he crouched slightly to meet the boy's gaze. "You should sleep, little one." Noah blinked sleepily, unafraid of the man who radiated power and danger. Lena's chest ached as she carried him toward the bedroom. Marcus indicated a sleek guest room that looked more expensive than anything she had ever touched. She laid Noah on the bed, tucking him under soft sheets, her hand lingering against his hair. When she turned back, Damien was standing in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the glow of the hall. His eyes lingered on the scene for a beat longer than necessary before he spoke. "Help me find the mole, Miss Carter. Do that, and both you and your son will walk out of here alive." Lena straightened her voice, low but steady. "And if I refuse, then you will force me to make choices neither of us wants." Their gazes locked the charged silence, pulling taut, until Lena's anger spilled through. "You think money and power give you the right to decide my life?" Damien's reply came quietly, almost intimately. "No, but they give me the means to keep you alive." The words sent a shiver through her, equal parts fury and fear, But beneath it all, something unspoken trembled between them. She turned away before he could see the crack in her resolve. She whispered fiercely to herself, "I will find a way out." Yet when her hand brushed the doorframe, she felt the heat of his gaze like a tether she could not break. For now survival meant staying. For now she had no choice. The night stretched long within the penthouse, and Lena found herself pacing near the massive windows while the city pulsed far below. Noah slept soundly in the guest room, wrapped in sheets softer than anything he had known, his little body finally at rest after days of sickness and worry. For the first time in weeks, he was safe, yet Lena could not feel safe at all. Damien Blackwell sat at a low table near the glass reviewing files. Glowing from a sleek tablet, his profile sharp against the storm-lit skyline. His silence pressed on her more heavily than words. Finally, she broke it. "Why me? I am nobody. I am a waitress who studies design at night." He looked up slowly, his eyes cool, but carrying something heavier. "My brother once said the same, before they destroyed him." Her brow furrowed. "Brother." Damien set the tablet aside, leaning back with the kind of control that came from never revealing too much. "He was younger than me, a programmer, brilliant. He believed he could change the world with one innovation. A scandal took his company down. Lies leaked data manipulation. He thought he could fight back. Instead, he lost everything." His voice was steady, but Lena heard the fracture buried beneath. "He drank too much. One night he drove into the river. They called it an accident. I called it what it was. A murder carried out with information instead of bullets." Lena's chest tightened. She whispered, "I am sorry." He studied her as if surprised by her sincerity. "Do not be. Grief builds walls. I chose to make mine out of steel." He paused, his gaze drifting toward the guest room where Noah slept. "That boy is your wall, is he not?" She nodded, her throat thick. "He is all I have. Ethan left us when Noah was 2. Said he could not handle the responsibility. Sometimes he shows up with promises. Mostly he just disappears." She sank into the sofa, her arms wrapping around herself. "I work doubles at the diner, I take classes at night, I fight to keep the lights on. Sometimes I do not know how much longer I can hold everything together." She laughed bitterly, tears stinging her eyes. "And then I text the wrong number and end up here in a cage lined with gold." Damien leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his voice lower now. "Not a cage, a fortress. You are safer here than anywhere in this city." She met his gaze, fire sparking through her tears. Safe does not feel like being owned. His eyes softened in a way that unsettled her more than his coldness. "I do not own you, Miss Carter, but if you walk out those doors, others will." Silence thickened between them until Noah's small voice pierced it. "Mommy." He stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, clutching his stuffed rabbit. Lena rushed to him, scooping him up. "Did we wake you, baby?" He shook his head. "I cannot sleep." Damien rose, his imposing figure suddenly gentler. "Come here, Noah." Lena stiffened, but Noah leaned toward him without hesitation. Damien crouched, taking the boy carefully, almost awkwardly, in his arms. He carried him to the sofa, settling him on his lap, and reached for a book from the shelf behind. His voice, rich and controlled, softened as he read each word, rolling smooth as rain. Lena watched from the edge of the sofa, her heart pounding with confusion. This was the man who had stormed her apartment hours ago, the man whose eyes were like blades, and yet he sat with her son in his arms, reading softly as Noah's lids grew heavy, his small hand resting trustingly against the billionaire's chest. Something shifted inside her, fragile but undeniable. When Noah drifted back to sleep, Damien carried him to the guest room, laying him gently on the bed and pulling the blanket up to his chin. He stood there a moment, looking down at the boy, with an expression Lena could not read. Then he closed the door quietly and returned to her. For a moment, neither spoke the storm. Outside subsiding into drizzle, the city glowing softer. Then Damien's phone vibrated. He answered, listening intently, his face hardening with each second. When he hung up, his eyes were darker than before. "We found a lead?" Lena asked carefully. "What kind of lead?" He held her gaze, his voice steady but sharp. "Ethan Donovan." Her breath froze. "Ethan, my ex." The words scraped from her throat. Damien's expression did not waver. "He has been seen with competitors of mine. He fits the profile. He is the most likely source of the leak." Lena staggered back, shaking her head violently. "No. Ethan is selfish, reckless, but he would not." Damien cut in cold, but not cruel. "You said it yourself. He abandons responsibility. Men like him do not care who they hurt." Her chest burned as though her heart had splintered. She pressed her fists against her temples. "He is Noah's father. Please, do not do anything to him." Damien's reply was a quiet hammer against the silence. He made his choice. Her tears fell hot and fast. She whispered, "I cannot let Noah lose him completely. He is still his father." Damien's eyes lingered on her, searching for lies, perhaps finding none. His voice dropped lower, carrying a weight she had not heard before. "You would protect a man who left you to drown." She shook her head, wiping her cheeks with trembling hands. "I would protect my son from knowing that the man who gave him life died at the hands of someone else." Her plea hung in the air, fragile yet fierce. Damien said nothing, but Marcus appeared at the door with his phone raised, a photograph glowing across the screen. Damien took it and turned it toward her. The image was grainy but clear enough. Ethan stood in the shadows of a luxury restaurant, shaking hands with a man Lena did not recognize. Another man flanking him with the look of bodyguards. Damien's voice was final. "This is your ex. This is our enemy." Her chest shattered, but she forced herself to breathe. Her past, her present, her survival, all colliding in one devastating truth. Lena stared at the photo in Damien's hand until her vision blurred. Ethan's familiar profile, the tilt of his head, the casual grin he always wore when he thought he was being clever. But now it was turned towards strangers in tailored suits, men whose presence radiated danger. She felt her knees weaken and sank into the nearest chair, her chest tight, as if the world itself had closed in around her. Damien placed the phone on the table between them, his voice cutting through the silence. "He betrayed you long before tonight." She shook her head, her voice cracking. "No, he is reckless. He lies. But he would not sell out something this dangerous. He would not risk Noah." Damien's eyes remained steady, unflinching. Men like him always risk what they claim to love. For money, for power, for escape. Lena pressed her hands against her face, trying to block out the image, the truth pressing in on her. Tears burned hot, spilling between her fingers. She whispered, "Please do not kill him. Whatever he has done, he is still Noah's father. He deserves the chance to explain." Damien's jaw tightened, his voice cold. "Explanations will not undo the damage he has already caused." Her heart shattered at the quiet finality in his tone, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. You do not get to decide life and death. Damien leaned closer, his gray eyes stormy. In my world, decisions are not luxuries. They are survival. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but the words withered in her throat when Marcus suddenly entered again, holding another device. "Sir, it is already out." Damien took the tablet, his face darkening as headlines splashed across the screen. Blackwell's secret mistress and child. Grainy photos of Lena carrying Noah out of the limo flooded the newsfeed captions, twisting the image into scandal. Lena's breath stopped. She stumbled toward the screen, her eyes wide. No, this cannot be happening. The articles painted her as a gold digger, the secret lover of Damien Blackwell, a single mother manipulating her way into the life of a billionaire. Comments and rumors spread beneath like wildfire, each word sharper than a knife. She covered her mouth, her body shaking. People will think Damien cut her off, his voice low but commanding. They will think what I allow them to think. He turned to Marcus. Tighten security, shut down leaks. Marcus nodded and disappeared into the hall. Lena backed away, tears spilling freely. "My life is ruined. My son's life is ruined. You have power, but I have nothing." Damien rose, stepping toward her, his presence both protective and consuming. He said firmly, "You are under my protection now. They will not touch you." His words hit her like a shield. She did not ask for, but desperately needed. Still, the weight of humiliation crushed her chest. She whispered, "I never wanted this. I just wanted to keep my son safe." Damien's expression softened for the briefest moment, his voice low and steady. "And that is why I cannot let you go." She froze her tears, catching in her throat. His words carried a charge, not only of power, but something deeper, something unspoken, that terrified and drew her all at once. Then her phone buzzed, shattering the fragile moment. She fumbled for it, her hands trembling as she saw the name glowing on the cracked screen. Ethan. Her stomach dropped. She answered, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan." His voice on the other end was sharp, frantic. "Sophie, where are you? What did you tell them?" Her breath caught anger and heartbreak tangling. "What did I tell them? What did you do, Ethan?" His tone shifted, urgent, desperate. "Meet me, tonight, or your son will never see his real father again." Lena's blood froze. She clutched the phone so tightly, her hand ached, her mind spinning with fear. Damien's eyes narrowed, reading her expression as if the words were audible to him. He stepped closer, his voice a low demand. What did he say? Lena lowered the phone slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She whispered, "He wants to meet. He threatened Noah." The words hung in the air like poison, and in that instant, Lena knew there was no turning back. The storm outside rumbled again, thunder rolling across the city as the walls of Damien Blackwell's world closed tighter around her. The night pressed heavier than the storm as Lena sat rigid in Damien's penthouse, the phone still clutched in her trembling hand. Ethan's threat echoed in her mind like a curse, each word dripping with danger. She wanted to scream, to smash the device, but Noah's soft breathing from the guest room reminded her of what was at stake. Damien stood near the window, his reflection a tall shadow against the city lights, his posture sharp with authority. He spoke without turning. "He has you cornered. That is how men like him survive." Lena's voice cracked. "He is Noah's father. He cannot mean it." Damien finally faced her, his eyes storm gray and unyielding. "He already meant it the moment he threatened you." The words cut deep, leaving her hollow. Her life was no longer hers, her son's safety, a bargaining chip in a game she never chose to play. Before she could answer, Marcus strode in, his expression grim. Paparazzi have surrounded the building. The story is exploding. Damien's jaw clenched. Move them back. Marcus shook his head. They will not leave without a statement. Damien's gaze slid back to Lena, weighing options in silence. Then he said firmly, I will end this now. Lena's panic rose. End it how? He walked to her, his presence overwhelming. By making it clear that you are under my protection. She shook her head fiercely. That will only make it worse. People already think I am some kind of mistress. Damien's tone softened but carried steel beneath. Better they believe lies than see you exposed as prey. Moments later they stood in the grand lobby of the tower lights, blinding cameras flashing like weapons. Lena's stomach churned as questions flew. Mr. Blackwell, who is she? Is this your secret lover? Is the child yours? Damien raised a hand, his voice commanding silence. She is not your story. She is under my protection. Leave her alone. His words struck like a hammer, his authority impossible to ignore. The cameras clicked faster, his declaration twisting into headlines, even as it shielded her. Lena wanted to vanish, to sink into the marble floor. But when she glanced at him, the way he stood close, unyielding, a strange warmth flickered beneath her fear. For a moment she felt less like a scandal and more like someone worth defending. They returned upstairs, Lena's body still shaking from the chaos. She collapsed onto the sofa, her face buried in her hands. I cannot do this. I cannot be in your world. Damien stood across from her, his voice steady but softer than before. You are already in it. The choice now is how you survive it. The words lingered, but before she could reply, her phone buzzed again. Ethan's number. Her breath caught as she answered, her voice trembling. Ethan, what do you want? His tone was low and dangerous. Meet me tomorrow night. Hotel Astoria, 8 o'clock. If you do not come alone, if I see his men, you will never see me again. And neither will Noah. Lena's heart stopped. She whispered, do not you dare threaten our son. Ethan's reply slithered like poison. Then do not betray me. The line went dead. She lowered the phone slowly, her hands trembling, her throat tight. Damien's eyes locked onto hers. Where? She swallowed hard. Hotel Astoria, tomorrow, 8. His jaw tightened, his expression unreadable. He wants you to come alone. Her voice cracked. He said, if I do not, I will lose Noah forever. Damien stepped closer, his gaze piercing. You will not go alone. Lena shook her head, fear clashing with fury. If he sees you, he will vanish. Damien's voice dropped to a vow. Then we make him think you are alone. He will not vanish. He will be caught. Lena's heart pounded, torn between terror and trust. She whispered, and if he runs? Damien's reply was quiet, lethal. Then he will have nowhere left to run. She turned away, pressing her palms to the glass, the city sprawling endlessly below. Her reflection showed a woman trapped between past and future, between a man who abandoned her and a man who terrified her by seeing her worth. Noah stirred faintly in the next room, his soft murmur carrying into the silence. Lena pressed her forehead to the window, whispering to herself, I just want him safe. Behind her, Damien's reflection stood tall, his presence, both prison and shield. He spoke low, as if making a promise to the storm itself. And that is why you will not face this alone. The following evening arrived with a weight that pressed on every nerve in Lena's body. The hours leading up to 8 o'clock stretched endlessly As she paced the penthouse, every tick of the clock reminding her of Ethan's ultimatum. Noah played quietly, with a set of blocks Damien's staff had provided his laughter soft and fleeting, a cruel contrast to the storm raging in her chest. Damien watched from across the room, dressed in a dark suit that sharpened his presence to something near lethal. His voice was calm, but absolute. "You will go in first. He will believe you are alone. My men will be positioned in the surrounding rooms. If he tries anything, it will end quickly." Lena clutched her coat tighter, her eyes fierce with fear. If he sees them, he will vanish. He will know. Damien stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "You are not bait. You are leverage, yes, but leverage I will not allow him to break." She flinched at the honesty in his words, torn between anger and gratitude. For Noah, she whispered, "Only for Noah." Damien's voice softened. "Everything is for him." The limousine carried them through the glowing streets, Lena's reflection trembling in the tinted glass as she rehearsed what she would say. The hotel loomed ahead, a tower of glass and gold. Inside the lobby buzzed with opulence, chandeliers dripping light across marble floors. Lena entered alone, her heart pounding, her hands clenched inside her coat pockets. She followed the directions Ethan had sent, each step echoing in her ears. At the designated suite, she pushed the door open and found him waiting. Ethan stood by the window, his posture restless, his face thinner than she remembered, eyes bloodshot and darting. He forced a smile that never reached his eyes. "Sophie, you came." She shut the door softly, her voice flat. "Do not call me that." His grin faltered, replaced by something sharper. "I did this for you, for us. They would have killed me if I had not played along." She shook her head, rage mixing with heartbreak. "You sold secrets, Ethan. You endangered everyone. And you dared to use our son as your shield." His voice rose desperate. "I had no choice. You think Blackwell will protect you. He will discard you when it suits him. I am your family. I am Noah's father." Her chest burned as she spat the truth. "A father who abandoned his child, who left me drowning." Ethan stepped forward, his hand reaching as if to touch her, but his eyes betrayed something dangerous. "Give me Noah. We can leave tonight. I have money, passports, everything ready." Her stomach turned cold. "You were going to take him without me." His silence was answer enough. Before she could speak again, the door burst open, and Damien strode, in his presence swallowing the room. Marcus and two other men flanked him, weapons drawn. Ethan's eyes widened, panic flashing. "You set me up." Damien's voice was cold steel. "You set yourself up." The tension snapped as figures surged from the adjoining room, armed men in dark suits, allies of Ethan's buyers. Gunfire erupted, shouts filling the suite. Lena dove behind a sofa, her heart slamming against her ribs as chaos unfolded. Damien shoved her down, shielding her with his own body. His arm braced against the furniture as bullets splintered wood and glass. She cried out as shards rained around them. Marcus returned fire. His voice a sharp command. "Get them out." One assailant lunged toward Lena, but Damien moved faster, his hand yanking her back, his other arm striking with brutal precision. The man crumpled, groaning. Then a sharp crack split the air, and Damien staggered, a crimson bloom spreading across his sleeve. He dropped to one knee, his breath hissing between clenched teeth. Lena's scream tore through the chaos. "Damien!" She crawled to him, gripping his shoulders, her hands slick with his blood. He forced his eyes open, his jaw set. "Stay down. Do not move." Tears blurred her vision as the firefight raged around them. Marcus and the others forced Ethan's allies back, pinning them in retreat. Ethan himself bolted for the door, but Marcus's men cut him off, wrestling him to the ground. The suite fell into silence except for Lena's ragged breathing. She pressed her hands to Damien's wound, sobbing, "Do not you dare die on me." His eyes met hers, storm gray, now dimmed with pain, yet a faint smile curved his lips. "I am not that easy to kill." He sagged against her, his weight heavy, his blood warm against her hands. For the first time since this nightmare began, Lena's fear was not for herself or even for Noah. It was for the man who had walked into her life like a storm and somehow become the only shield she trusted. The hours after the firefight blurred into fragments of light and sound, but what Lena remembered most vividly was the weight of Damien's body slumping against her as Marcus and the others cleared the suite. They carried him swiftly through hidden corridors to a waiting car, and she pressed her hands against his wound, the entire way her whispers of frantic prayer. "Please stay with me, please." In the penthouse, he was laid on a long leather sofa while a doctor rushed in, summoned by Marcus with quiet efficiency. Lena knelt at Damien's side, refusing to move, even as the doctor cleaned and stitched the injury. "It is not fatal," the doctor assured, "but he needs rest." Relief crashed over her in waves so powerful she nearly sobbed. When the room finally cleared, she sat beside him, her hand still holding his. Even as his eyes fluttered open, he tried to sit up, but she pressed gently against his chest. "Do not. You need to heal." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "I am not used to being told what to do." She choked out a trembling laugh, brushing damp hair from her face. "Then you will have to adjust, because I am not leaving your side." The city outside was quiet, the storm finally broken, and moonlight streamed across the glass walls, bathing the room in silver. Damien turned his head toward her, his gray eyes softer than she had ever seen them. "You should not be here. My world is not safe." She shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I am terrified, Damien, terrified of losing you." His breath caught, and for a moment the controlled billionaire vanished, replaced by a man stripped bare. He whispered, "Stay. Not because you are trapped, because you want to." The words hung between them, heavy with a tenderness that frightened her more than his power ever had. She squeezed his hand, her voice breaking. "I want to, but I am so afraid." He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles with a reverence that undid her completely. "Fear means you have something worth losing, Lena." Her chest ached with a strange, soaring warmth. She leaned closer, their foreheads nearly touching the air between them, charged with something raw and undeniable. Before she could surrender fully to the moment, Marcus entered quietly, his expression grim. "Ethan is in custody. He is talking." Damien's eyes hardened again, though he did not release her hand. "What did he say?" Marcus's gaze flicked to Lena, then back to Damien. He admitted everything. The data theft, the buyers, the attempt to use his son as leverage. Damien's jaw tightened, but Lena spoke first, her voice trembling. "Please, do not kill him. He is Noah's father." Damien turned his gaze back to her, the conflict clear in his eyes. After a long silence he spoke. "He will stand trial. Not in the streets, not in the shadows. I will not stain your son's memory of him more than Ethan already has." Lena's tears fell again, this time with gratitude. "Thank you." Marcus nodded and left them alone once more. The silence returned, softer now, wrapped in moonlight and exhaustion. Lena shifted closer, brushing her fingers lightly across Damien's bandaged arm. "You protected us when you did not have to. You risked everything." His voice was steady but quiet. "Somewhere between the moment you opened your door and the moment Noah called me Dad, I realized I had no choice." She laughed through her tears, the sound fragile but real. "That is the most unromantic confession I have ever heard." He smiled faintly, his storm-gray eyes warming. "Then let me try again." He reached for her cheek with his uninjured hand, his touch gentle. "I want you, Lena Carter, not as leverage, not as protection, as mine." The words struck deeper than any vow, and her heart swelled with a mixture of fear and joy. She whispered back, "I want you too." And for the first time since her life had been torn apart, the future did not feel like a trap, but like a possibility. Ethan was gone, the danger receding, but the man before her was more terrifying than all of it, because he made her believe in something she thought she had lost forever: hope. A year later, the city was different in Lena's eyes, not because Manhattan had changed, but because her life had. The tiny apartment in Brooklyn was long behind her, replaced by a modest design studio she had opened with support from a grant Blackwell Foundation provided, though Damien insisted she earned it with talent, not charity. The studio walls gleamed with her sketches pinned alongside prototypes' fabrics, draped across tables, and sunlight spilling over displays of her first real clients' gowns. She worked long hours still, but with purpose, not desperation. Noah sat in a corner, drawing on a tablet, his tongue poking from the corner of his mouth, as he scribbled brightly colored shapes. Every so often he would glance up and smile at Damien, who leaned against the wall, in a tailored suit, his phone in one hand, though his gaze never strayed far from them. Their lives were public now, though carefully controlled. After the scandal broke, Damien had stood before the press again, not as a shield this time, but as a partner declaring openly that Lena Carter and her son were his family. The headlines had raged for weeks, but eventually turned fascination, replacing scandal, until magazines labeled them a power couple, the billionaire and the designer, who had captured his heart. Lena laughed whenever she read those words. She never felt like a power anything, just a woman who had fought too hard to give up. Damien, however, seemed to thrive under the new light, his edges softened in private, though the world still saw steel. At night, he read to Noah, his deep voice, transforming fairy tales into something grander. And in the mornings he made Lena coffee before her classes, a ritual so ordinary it felt more precious than diamonds. Still shadows lingered. Ethan had been tried and sentenced, his name whispered only when Noah asked, and Lena answered carefully, never lying but never poisoning her son's memory either. Damien had promised her that, and he kept his word. One spring afternoon, a familiar hum filled the street outside the studio. Lena looked up from her sketchbook to see the sleek black limousine glide to a stop in front of the old building she once called home. She smiled, remembering the terror of that first night, when headlights had meant danger. Today, they meant something else entirely. Damien opened the door and extended his hand, his gray eyes warm with a rare, unguarded smile. Noah bounded out, first clutching a small picnic basket, his laughter filling the street. "Come on, Mommy, hurry." Lena stepped outside, the sun warming her skin, her heart swelling as she slipped her hand into Damien's. Together they walked toward the waiting car, not prisoners, but a family. The limo door closed softly behind them, and instead of dread, Lena felt peace. As the car pulled away, She glanced back at the old brick building and whispered a quiet farewell. That chapter was done. She turned to Damien and Noah, her future written not in fear, but in love. One mistaken text had once brought her to the edge of ruin. Instead, it had brought her to this moment where fear had become strength, chaos had become family, and the love she never knew she deserved was finally hers.